In the last week or so, I've spent quite a bit of my spare time weeding. I've come to Cornwall to form a bubble with my mum, and I've been working from her study, but in odd moments I've been trying to tackle some of the work that needed doing in her garden. And aside from a little bit of pruning, it has almost exclusively been weeding. And most of this weeding has been to try and reveal the gravel in the front and back gardens that was completely green when I arrived. I'll be going home again very soon and may not get it all done. But it's been a good exercise in mindfulness this week. It's been a really good opportunity to focus on the simple, repetitive task in hand and to just take notice of things that might ordinarily have passed me by, like the way the heat on a sunny day seems to come in waves and pulses, or the delicate feel of drizzle on bare skin that you hardly notice until suddenly it seems that you're really rather wet. My feelings about the weeding have changed several times during the week. There have been moments when I've been quite pleased with myself. I've looked back over an area that I've completely cleared with a great sense of achievement. I can actually see the difference that all my hard work has made, and there aren't many times in daily life that I can say that. There have been other times when I feel like I've been pulling up weeds for ages but don't seem to have made much impact at all. And I've taken notice of what the weeds are like. I know which ones will come out easily and which ones will require some effort with the trowel and a lot of pulling. I've also noticed that there are times when I work quite methodically, going over a small area and pulling out everything as I come to it. But there are other times when I take a much more random approach. This might be because I've decided to work quickly and just go for the ones that will pull out easily. Or because I've decided that while I've got the trowel in my hand, I may as well tackle the ones that are more of a problem. There are also times when I've become aware of the destructive nature of weeding. Anything that actually has a flower on it, I've left for now, as there are plenty of bees and other insects making the most of them. And some weeds looked so happy and established that I felt really bad about getting rid of them. The other day I pulled up a clump of something only to disturb a large settlement of woodlice, including masses of baby woodlice that all went scattering in different directions, and I felt completely mortified. If I could have put the weed back in and gathered up the woodlouse family into safety, I would have done. I was reminded of a television programme I watched several years ago now about weeds. In fact, I was so impressed by this programme that I've had a post-it note stuck in the front of my diary for at least 4 years, waiting for the moment to be used. On the post-it note I've written, "Be more like weeds, thriving in disturbance and bringing life where there is none." Well, I think the moment for the post-it note has come. Often we think about weeds in a negative way. I've probably used them as a metaphor many times for things that need getting rid of, perhaps for habits that have become rooted and established in my life that I need to attend to and deal with. But this last week, despite the many weeds I've pulled out, I've been trying to think about them in a different, more positive way. As I feel that I've become closer to them in the last few days, I've almost felt sorry for them in a funny kind of way. You've probably heard a common definition of a weed. It's just a plant growing in the wrong place. So weeds are always out of place, unwanted. Their survival is precarious. At any moment, an eager gardener could come along and uproot them. And this all seems a bit unfair. I've noticed a lot about my approach to life through the weeding process. Sometimes there are things I try to avoid. Sometimes I opt for the easiest option, even if I know it's not necessarily the right one or the sensible one. Sometimes I feel a sense of achievement, and sometimes I get concerned about the apparent futility of things. Sometimes I encounter things that seem stubbornly insurmountable, and at other times I feel like I'm on an effortless streak. But I've been wondering, what can I learn from the weeds themselves, and not just from the weeding process? Can weeds be redeemed? Can I redress the balance in the way that I look at them? Particularly as I have returned to my old post-it note with its imperative to be more like weeds. How can I be more like a weed in my approach to life and faith? Looking at my mum's gravel drive, I'm thinking that there are not many things that could grow there. For a start, the car goes in and out of there pretty regularly, so you wouldn't actually want to plant anything there intentionally. Whatever grows there has to be able to cope with being trampled and compressed, as well as having very little soil. You've got to admire the tenacity of weeds to be able to flourish wherever they find themselves, despite often having very little in the way of resources. They seem to be able to manage to find exactly what they need. And as I wrote on my post-it note, they thrive in disturbance. They not only cope with living on the edge of things in precarious circumstances, but they bloom and grow. And actually, they are often the only signs of life in barren and desolate places, creeping out between cracks in concrete and stubbornly, colourfully clinging on in our sterile urban landscapes. Where everything else seems dead, there they are, reminding us that despite our best efforts to control and tame and sanitize, nature always finds a way. And weeds provide shelter, safety and sustenance for a much wider range of wildlife. So many tiny and seemingly vulnerable things depend on weeds. Thinking about the large number of ants, spiders and woodlice that I've rendered homeless this week, I'm wondering if the desire for neatness is really worth the bother. It actually seems to come at too great a cost. The early followers of Jesus were a bit like weeds. They were unwanted, they were perceived as a threat, and the political and religious authorities wanted to exterminate them. There were active campaigns to eliminate them and wipe them out, but in the persecution and disturbance, the early church thrived. The early Christians knew that their existence was precarious, but they also had a deeper awareness of their dependence on God and a deeper gratitude and appreciation of God's faithfulness and provision. Unfortunately, in many ways, the church became respectable and established in the Western world over centuries. And in the environment of Christendom, state-sanctified Christianity, the church ultimately declined to the point of near death, which I think is where we are today. Comfort, respectability, too many of our own resources, all of these things have been to our detriment, and therefore also to the detriment of our wider communities. As Christians, I think we need to let go of everything we've become used to and learn to be more like weeds again, thriving in disturbance, surviving on apparently nothing, and bringing life to dead and barren places. For me, that's one of the challenges of lockdown. We've taken our comfortable life for granted for too long, and now it's been gone for a while, and it's unlikely to return to anything like it was before, for at least months and possibly years. We have to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to shrivel up and die like a pampered plant that needs so many things to be just right for it to grow? Or can we learn to be more like weeds? Can we flourish where we are in these strange and unpredictable circumstances? Can we cling on, bringing life and hope on the edges and margins? Can we return to the one in whom we find our roots? And can we trust that we will be provided with all that we need? Can we embrace the disruption, the constant turning of our soil, the unsettling, and make it the place in which we grow and flourish and are fruitful? I know I have a few more weeds to deal with for my mum, and I will approach them with mixed feelings. I can't help but wonder how I may see myself reflected in those weeds, and whether I can be as tenacious and beautiful and life-giving and abundant as they are. It will probably take quite a lot of effort to step out of the realm of neatness and control. But I am supremely grateful that God, the great gardener, loves all the weeds, and that in God's love and care, each of us is wanted and has a special place.